62% of SWAT raids are conducted in searching for drugs. This is unbelievable. These are new numbers from the ACLU, which has released its year-long study of police militarization, okay? I'm going to read to you the findings. These are based on 2011 to 2012 data, which is the most recent that is available right now. 62% of SWAT raids surveyed were to conduct searches for drugs. Under 80% of SWAT raids were to serve a search warrant, meaning that 8 out of 10 SWAT raids were not initiated to apprehend a school shooter, hostage taker, or escaped felon, which are typically the justifications for a militarized SWAT raid. 7% of SWAT raids were for hostage, barricade, or active shooter scenarios. Only 7%. At least 36% of the SWAT raids studied concluded that no contraband of any kind was even found. SWAT tactics are, of course, disproportionately used on people of color. Obvious, we knew that. If you've been paying attention to the prison industrial complex at all, that would come as no surprise. And 65% of SWAT deployments resulted in some sort of forced entry into a private home by way of a battering ram, boot, or an explosive device. And in more than half of those aggressive entries, we'll call them, into homes, in more than half of those raids, police found no weapon at all, the presence of which was cited as a justification for that aggressive entry. Ironically, or perhaps not, searches to serve warrants on people suspected of drug crimes were more likely to result in these forced entries than raids conducted for all other purposes. What does this really mean? What this means is that, in other words, SWAT tactics, aggressive SWAT tactics, which were at one point in this country used only for violent, limited situations where someone had already committed a violent crime or clearly was about to, those same tactics are being used overwhelmingly for non-violent individuals suspected of being involved with drugs and often incorrectly suspected of that. What do you make of this?
It's a disaster. We talked just a couple weeks ago about a SWAT team throwing a flashbang into a baby's crib. And, you know, as long as they keep going after these nonviolent offenders and going into homes where they think there might be drugs, things like this are going to happen. So it really is just the war on drugs that is the problem.
And marijuana has law enforcement in a tizzy. They don't know what to do. I mean, they're conducting SWAT raids the way you would if you had a barricaded shooter with hostages who had already killed 2 people. We're seeing the same violent tactics used for people that are involved with drugs. And you would think, Lewis, if you believed for a second, which we already know isn't true, if you believed that the NRA was a group that really was about defending the Constitution, so to speak, that the NRA would be all over this and they would be speaking out against this. But unfortunately, they're actually using the threat of a tyrannical government as a reason to sell more guns, which is really their only priority whatsoever. And it really shows the transparency of that group.
All of these situations are working for the NRA, David. The drug dealers think they need guns because SWAT teams are going to come after them. The SWAT teams need guns. Everyone's worried that the SWAT team will come into their home unprovoked. Maybe they need a gun. It's just, yeah, very profitable.
The winner is clear. The winner is the firearm industrial complex, as well as the prison system, as well as those fighting this failed war on drugs.